We can still have drugs. It's the last
I'm
part
at
of
the
a book.
publishing stage. I want drugs.
You see, so as you can see, it's not easy birthing this thing. It's really such a the process has been intense. But I guess that for this chapter, I guess what I really want to portray, because it is more about my immigrant experience and what it was like to experience a lot of just the first couple of years coming here was just really tough, really fucking hard. So yeah, so a little bit of sharing into that. So it's 3 pieces. Hey, Sophie, thanks for coming. So there's 3 pieces to this part, because like I said, this book, I don't know exactly how it's gonna flow. I'm still gonna have to be working with an editor to really put that in a formatter to help me put that all together. But what I really want for this story, it's like a couple of pieces. So there is the experience of what it was to live in a halfway house in Buffalo, which is like an immigrant kind of a place where people come and stay until they get an interview to go into Canada, and what it was like to get into Canada, get deported, and end up in that immigrant halfway house. And then the third piece is really me speaking to that experience in a more raw, real level, not just like telling you the story of it, and kind of the impact. And again, with these pieces, I find that as I rip each layer off, there's deeper and deeper, like a lot of unhealed shit behind it. So that's the beauty of the discovering of these stories. So I just want to say thank you for coming again. You guys have been so awesome and supportive, and I can't wait. Let's get started. Let's see, where's my thing? Nope. What did I do? Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure you guys are all muted. Oh, somebody's coming in. Amazing. All right, so we have, I hope I don't have, I'm recording this. Yes, I am. Sorry. Okay, guys, amazing. Let me just find my tab. So like I said, this is about my experience from being deported, living in a halfway house, an immigration halfway house in Buffalo, and what that experience was like when I was really young. Okay, amazing. So let's start. All right, so here's the first piece. It's called Deported. It says, "Sir, get out of the car and step away from the vehicle. Put your hands up where I can see them." "Do you know why we stopped you?" the cop asked. "Gisela, ¿qué dice?" asked my father. "What is he saying?" Pa, que si sabe por qué lo pararon," I answered. "Do you know why you got stopped?" He said, "No." "Sir, there's a warrant out for your immediate removal from the country." My 6-month-old sister started crying. A second cop comes around the passenger seat and sees my mom, then glances at me and my 2 sisters in the back. I start to panic. My middle sister, Ale, turns her head towards me. I freeze. But this was my moment. "Hold it together, Gisela. Ale's waiting for your reaction." We were just coming home from Food Basics. They checked our car and all they found was a trunk full of groceries. "Sir, do you know you're going to be deported?" "No," my father answered. "We're going to have to confiscate everything here and take you all into custody." My hands were shaking. They asked my mother to step out. They put her hands behind her back and cuffed her. I cannot move. I can barely breathe. They have us step onto the side of the road as I hold my little sister. We stand there waiting to be taken. Like criminals, we're put in the back of 2 police cars. I see my mother's face. She's confused, not knowing what's going on. I look for my dad, but he's gone, in the car ahead. As we walk off, I look at the empty gray car on the side of the road with a trunk full of groceries for a family that was never going to see that or any of their belongings again. As we pull into the police station, awaiting instructions, my mother looks at me. "Don't worry, it'll be okay." At that moment, I cannot hold it together. I'm trying so hard to stay strong, and I cannot let them see me break. But my mother's words cracked through my mask, and I could not stop sobbing in that moment. And nothing was okay. They put us in a small bus that was going to transfer us to an immigration detention center. The moment you enter there, they take all your belongings away: earrings, rings, belts, shoelaces. anything that they consider dangerous cannot be brought in. The walls are white and the hallways are long. The officer directing us to our holding area does not say much. He just says, women and children this way, men that way. I didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to my father. He walked into the white doors and I didn't see him again. My mother, my sister, and I were put into a room with 2 beds and a crib, all by ourselves. And from memory, I can't tell you how long we were there, but the fear of being in that room with 4 white walls without being able to go anywhere other than to eat was one of the most terrifying moments of my life. The week that we were there before they arranged our deportation was a week where a piece of me died, and until this day, the flashbacks of desperation still haunt me. It's as if someone put a pillow over my face and wouldn't let me breathe. I scream and scream, but no one can hear me. We get taken in. Sir, you have 2 choices here. We can deport you back to your country of origin, or we can deport you back to the US. You have a valid visa. And back to Buffalo we went. So that first piece is about the actual experience of like getting deported and what that was like in that moment. We had a valid visa, so thankfully we were able to actually stay in North America, not have to go back to Colombia. Now the next piece is about Vive la Casa, which is a halfway house, and that's actually the name of the house. We stood in front of the gray gates that surrounded this brick brown building called Vive la Casa. A white cross at the top reminded me of a church back home. But an abrupt closing of the cab doors took my gaze away from the cross and to my father's face. With a short tone, he said, "Let's go." We grabbed our bags and started walking towards the big brown doors. Like walking into church, I put my gaze down and hoped for the best. As the doors opened, more stairs greeted us. My gaze went from side to side, unlike the cold exteriors My gaze went from side to side, and unlike the cold exterior outside, it was colorful in here. Each step created loud creaking sounds, but I was more distracted by the colors and paintings on the wall, welcoming us. As I pierced down the hall, my parents were being interviewed for intake. The smell of old wood was everywhere. I sneezed, and having asthma did not help the situation. Being here felt like a lifetime to me. I was 9 at this point. The day that we arrived, we got a grand tour of the place. Classroom for adults and children, dorm rooms on the 2nd floor, one side for men, one side for women and children. The cafeteria, showers, washrooms were all in the basement, but the room I cared for the most was the library, the biggest collection of books I had ever seen. In this place, I fell in love with the smell of books. I had no idea how to read English, but there was something about books that reminded me of the cassette tapes my mom used to play and follow along with me every afternoon in Colombia. It was peaceful, and being in that quiet room on a late afternoon was one of my favorite things to do. The halls were usually empty on the 1st floor. Most of the kids would hang out in the basement, but every time you heard the creaky floor sound, it announced the coming of a new family, and that was exciting. The paintings on the wall was what brought this place to life. A world map welcomed you, and it was here that I learned that India existed. It was here that I saw the bindi on the forehead for the first time and the colorful scarves that covered the body of women around me. I made friends easily. Here, my father could not punish me or stay. Here, my father could not punish me. And soon as we got here, he decided to go back to Houston, Texas to work and left me, my mom, and sisters alone. My sister Ale was 4 at this time, and she was a crier. She was not happy about anything ever, but I could tell she just felt a lot. She was more sensitive than I was. She felt pain deeply, and new places really scared her. She would cry so much that a worker from Vive took pity on my mom, and her name was Anna. She was young, her hair was short and white, but there was something about the way she looked that made your fears disappear. She always wore white track pants and soft pink shirts. I never saw her in any other mood, but calm and peaceful. She knew everything about meditation, pressure points, and holistic medicine. One day, she saw my mom struggling with Ale. She was inconsolable, loud, tears that somehow never ended. Ale would hide her face in a corner at the end of the bed, and in a dorm where all women and children slept, let's just say people were not really loving us. Anna heard my sister cry as she came in and asked my mom to hold her. She took her shirt off and began to massage her back, while my mom held her arms. Her cries got softer and softer, and she could not see that it was Anna massaging her, but you could see Ale melt into my mother as Anna rubbed her back. In that moment, I was in complete awe. I became fascinated with what Anna did and told her I wanted to learn too. She taught me about how muscles hold tension and pain and how through massage you can help release it. She was something I'd never seen before. Her tone was so kind and generous, indulging me in every conversation. In every conversation I started with her, never making me feel like anything I asked was too much, irrelevant, or childish. I still remember how she printed a copy of the pressure points for feet so that I could learn how to massage my mom's feet. Anna made it a ritual to check up on us. She made Viva la Casa feel like a safe haven, but most of all, she made me feel special. For a house that could host anything from 150 to 200 immigrants at a time, I felt like I was the only one there. Her grounded voice and hugs and magical hands made every uncertain day a little more bearable. In this place, where from the outside nothing was more than an old Catholic school, it was here that I found peace, love, and magic, even when the world felt like it was crumbling beneath my feet. So that's a piece that I wrote in terms of my experience in Viva la Casa. And I feel like this piece was really hard to bring forward because there was just so many things that I felt in that moment. And I feel like there's more to this story. So I'm just putting it out there that I'm still digging through this chapter, as I feel that there are parts of me that still hasn't allowed myself to go deeper into the story as much as I want to. And I feel that it comes just from fear of a lot of anger that I experienced in that period in my life, honestly, and re-experiencing and reliving it. So the next one, let me just make sure. Oh, sorry, there's some people that I need to be let in. And here's the last one, and this is called Dear Officer. One second. Okay. Dear officer, I hope you hear my cries and they never leave your mind as you cuffed my dad and took my mom away. As you made me hold my screaming 6-month-old sister in my hands, I hope you never forget my face. I hope we keep you up at night and never let you rest. Do you even remember my name? As you put me into the back of your car like a fucking criminal. Do you know that car you're taking away? Yes, it's old and gray and looks more like a tin can. Some windows don't even open properly. But did you know that my dad had to clean many washrooms to pay for it? That it was his first car where all 5 of us could fit comfortably. You should have seen the day he got it. He had a smile from one side of his face to the other and took us for a ride. I hope you enjoy the groceries in the trunk. Use them well. Feeding a family of 5 was not easy, but my dad did it well. So savor it. Those are not just dollars you're taking, but hard-earned food destined for a table it will never get to. Dear officer, do you feel powerful sending little immigrant girls to holding cells, separating them from their fathers and dismantling their life? I hope you know that my heart stops every time I hear the police sirens, that to serve and protect means shit, that calling the police for any reason up to this day is still my nightmare. Your due process stepped on my human rights, but most of all, it took my voice away. You muzzled me, tied my hands with restraints that I cannot shake off even years later. I've repressed anger for this long and still cannot find all the words to describe the pain that you put me through on that very sunny day just past 11 a.m. I spent years angry, wanting justice for my family. Went and even studied political science to see if they would have the answer. Turns out you can't change the system from the inside. So I'll rally from the outside. My words cannot be silenced. No amount of time can heal the abuse of your power. We are not criminals. We are humans trying to find a place to rest our head. We are not wild animals who walked onto your fertile ground. Is there not enough land for all of us? But I guess I should be grateful. I'm here. Put my head down, mind my business, live my life, right? I should have made peace with that horrid day. The angry immigrant child, wouldn't that have made a headline? I wish I could have stopped my tears and shown you the inside of my soul that day. It was on fire, burning itself and wishing you dead. But I can't. I'm Canadian now, eh? And gratitude is all I should have for this country that didn't want me back. The angry immigrant child. Wouldn't that be fun if you saw it in the Toronto Star? See, if I was gonna sit here and end the story with a bow, a call of forgiveness and acceptance, but that wouldn't be true. I'm not satisfied until my call is heard and all of those whose pain you caused rally together once and for all. Dear officer, remember me. So that was the third piece. And this time in my life, this period where the deportation happened and living in Buffalo was a very intense period. There's also pieces that are missing. I actually lived in a shelter during that time with my mother because my mom ran away from my dad for about 3 months. That's when my sister was born in a women's shelter. And that's a story that I also wanted to add to this, but it was very, I just feel like it's been a lot. It's been a lot to rip all these bandages off at once. So I've just been pacing myself a little bit and being kind to myself because as you could see, like, I feel that as I dig, I'm just touching the surface of a lot of things that I've carried within myself. And, sorry, someone's coming. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just saw that. It's Paloma in here? Paloma's in here, yeah. And I just feel like in that period of my life, there was a lot. Like, it was a 3-year period, but a lot had happened. We didn't have a home. We lived in Montreal, Buffalo, Toronto, deportation, shelter. It was like jam-packed. And I feel like this is the first time I've ever gone back into this period. And I feel like I'm still finding my voice within it and trying to bring out the things that I really want to come through. But I just feel like I have to be gentle with myself and not push myself too hard on this one. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of like the story. So I was very I don't know, I've never dug into this story deeper than like when I was doing this kind of work. So for the past 2 weeks, I've been digging into the story, and it's just like, this is I can feel this is like the tip of it. It's not really the whole story there yet. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to share with you guys and kind of bring you into my journey of what it was to kind of be an immigrant. Melanie, I love you. P, are you there?
Hi, Giselle.
Hey, babe. So yeah, guys. So yeah, I just want to share that with you. And I would love any feedback, anything that stood out for you, because this was really hard to actually bring forward. I felt like because that those memories are so scattered, I had to really piece them together and make them into something. And I feel like it's still even not there yet. But yeah, I would just love your feedback. Anything that stood out to you so that I can keep that in mind as I progress with this chapter.
Gisela, wonderful job. I'm curious how many stories are so detailed and, thorough like this of the immigration story? Because, in listening to your story, I'm like, wow, I've never really heard like an inside scoop. And I hate to make it sound so blasé, like the inside scoop, but it feels very insider information. And I think that's really special. And I think if I were to say anything, it's continuing with that side of it, of like being like, imagine you're talking to someone like myself who has never, I know there are places for deportation. Like, I know there are deportation centers. We know that there are children there, women and children separate. Like, it's really interesting to hear the details of your experience from the inside. And if you can give more, and if you can do work to dig more into that, and just keep giving that information that would be just so not real for anyone who hasn't been through it.
Yeah.
That is what I think really stood out for me. I was like, wow, I've never heard a story of someone from inside that is now outside and willing to share what that felt like, because I'm imagining it's not that different from now. So that was really special. That's really, it sparked more for me. And I think if you can do that as much as possible, I think it'll just grab your reader, whatever reader that is, and keep them just so enthralled, because that's an enthralling piece of it.
Definitely. No, I really appreciate that. I really do. And that's the thing. You know what's so funny? When I was looking up these places, because like they're real places that exist. So I was like Googling them and trying to find them and trying to see inside of them. There's just nothing from the other perspective. There's just nothing. Even what they say about the places don't even like fully say what goes on in there. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's mind blowing. And that's why, and I think that's why it brought me a lot of like anger, because I was like, this is bullshit. Like there's no one speaking about what's happening like inside those places, you know?
Yeah, it makes me wonder if there's been censorship in some respect. Like, how are they censoring people from leaving and telling them, the press or the media, like, you know, explaining, because we just don't hear a lot about what happens on the inside, and we do, but we don't, you know. And I think that's what's really special about your writing, at least at this phase, is it's some really interesting truths about what's going on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, Gisela, this was, thank you for sharing it. Like I could hear the rawness, right? And the kind of like broken glass of having to regurgitate this. It's still so fresh. So thank you.
Very fresh. And it was like 21 or years ago. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, trauma is trauma, man. I think that it's really powerful that you're putting this out there, and my kind of editor brain peaked up, not in the sense of like you missed an apostrophe editor brain, but in the sense of kind of the way that this could be sequentially played out. And if I was your writing coach, what I would say is like these.
Oh, we lost you, Elizabeth.
Liz.
She was getting to the good part. She was going to give me the magic formula that's going to make this book freaking damn it. Why? Okay, she'll come back. She'll come back. While she comes back, let's see.
Can you hear now?
There it is.
Yes.
Oh, Jesus, help us. Okay, so this is what I would say if I was your writing professor.
Yes, please. I'm taking notes, so go ahead.
Okay, I would suggest that you build out, like, how many chapters do you envision the book being?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know yet.
So one of the things, like knowing your story personally a little bit, right? Like one of the things that I find the most compelling about you as a human is your A to B, right? The two in there, the A to B, right? That journey of where you are now and where you were then. And it can be a very powerful, and Paloma, you could probably speak more to this, but it can be a powerful thing to just juxtapose those in the same chapter, like as a literary style. It could be very cool if you could snapshot like the car moment, right? Being pulled over and building that out, right? If you had like 10 of those, like a handful of these very visceral memories that you could build out into, I don't know, 10 to 12 paragraph vignettes, and use those to either kickstart, like to kickstart each chapter, and like talk about, like, maybe it's not at the start of the chapter, but there's a, like, one way you could structure the book is to have, this is the beautiful glossy life that I have now, but if only you knew the backstory, right? And to have this kind of like time lapse back and forth puts people in a place where they understand what I don't want to say accomplishment, right? Because I know you're not doing this to be like, I stuck the landing on being a baller, right? Like, which you have.
Thank you.
But I think like the service that you're doing to people, the service that you're offering people right now is showing them that like overcoming adversity is possible, right? That who we are in our core, right, cannot be dulled by trauma, cannot be dulled by pain. if you choose to do the work, right? And I think it could be really powerful to hold those up side by side. This is what it was like. This is what it's like today. And like through the course of the book, be telling the journey of it. But those flashbacks, I think, are such a powerful storytelling tool because they illustrate the contrast.
Yeah.
Can I piggyback off that really fast?
Yes, please.
Just for like throwing it out there, like it would be really cool if you went back to those places, and not to like burden yourself with more tasks of writing and birthing this book, but it would just be cool because I love this idea of when we're little, things seem so large or so white or so clear or so something. They're just so different as a smaller perspective. But it would be really interesting to play off Liz's idea of what's now and what was then, and like if you were actually back in the same spot as you now and then remembering what was then. Not only would I think it be just an interesting literary twist, but also it might help you better pull memories out and better flesh out this if you were back there. And again, that's just even theoretically, maybe you go back there in your mind, or if you go back as an adult.
I actually pulled some pictures. I have like, okay. I did pull some pictures, and honestly, actually the visual of it in my head is actually very clear. And when I look back at the pictures, it looks the same as I thought it would. But I love it. Actually, looking back at my experience in Viva la Casa, like I would love to go back and actually see, because honestly, like for a place where, you hold immigrants, like it felt very different than what being in a detention center for immigrants here felt like. You know what I mean? Like the very opposing feeling, where it's like one was welcoming and all this, and the other one like literally looked like you're in a loony bin. Nothing is on the wall, and like nothing is on the floor. Everything's squeaky clean. Like basically it's like jail without the bars, and they had some jail parts for more like dangerous people or people that were gonna run away or something. You know what I mean? So it's very contrast. And this is where I want to pick up more, but I really appreciate both of you, what you're saying with the flashbacks. I think, and that's the thing, like right now I'm just fleshing out the stories that come from it, because as you could see, there's different angles that come from it, as I produce each as the story comes forward. So no, this is amazing feedback. I really, really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
You're doing awesome.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you.
Anybody else? I agree with what Isabel was saying about how she'd like never heard that side before. Because same thing. It was like very interesting for me to hear that, and so I think, if you like, I know it's hard to do and it's painful, but I hope that you have the patience to kind of stick with it and try and flesh that out as much as you can, because it's very gripping, and it's like I'm so interested to hear more about that side of it. But you said one line that I really liked, something about the restraints that you still have to this day, and I liked that parallel of just how you talked about how much that experience has stuck with you.
And that's what I want to bring more into the picture. I appreciate that you mentioned that, the restraints, because it's true. Like, that was a very defining moment for me when we were arrested and I saw the police that were supposed to protect us kind of like treat us like criminals. And in that moment, through the work that I've done with Paloma in terms of authority, that's one of the biggest reasons why I could never ask for help from a teacher or someone of authority, because I never trusted them to help me. I felt that they could tell on me, they're going to send me away, they're going to send me to jail, like literally all these connections. And so this whole life, instead of me trying to take the easy route and being like, I'm just going to ask for help from the person that knows, I'm like, no, you got to do it yourself, do it underground, do it like your way, you know what I mean? Because they can tell on you or like send you to jail. And so that's what I really wanted to come across, because I, even to this day, even when I think about it, it's still very hard, even in my relationships. When I say if I have to call the police, I'd rather like have someone probably beat me than have to call the police. That's how like real this shit is for me, in terms of like the effects it has when authority really like marks you. So no, I appreciate that you mentioned that, the restraints.
Gise, it was so interesting. Like I felt like I mean, I've never heard those stories, you know what I mean? And it's just like, it's so interesting to hear them. It's crazy because I feel like you and I have talked about so much. We've talked about the past. We've known each other for a long time, and yet I've never heard any of those stories. I really liked your description of your emotions. Like, I felt like that was really strong, and that really like left a strong impression on me, how clear your emotions and like how developed they were at that time. I think it was also very powerful how you described the reactions of your sisters and how they took it on, like being so small. There was part of it, like when you said that you got to the detention center and they sent your dad one way, they sent you guys another way. It even actually, like for me, reminded me of like a concentration camp. Like that's kind of what I think of. That's what I imagine. And so like it really nails down the point of like how horrible it was for you guys. I want to know why you guys were deported. That's something you didn't go into. I don't know if it's important, but like that's a major question that I have.
Come to the next chapter. No. Am I kidding? No, we actually did. I can tell why I got deported. We had a bad lawyer. So the lawyer didn't file the information right on time. And the deportation note got to Montreal, which we weren't living in Montreal at that point. So they sent it to the wrong address. And they, once after 30 days, if you do not respond, they send out a countrywide notice that if they see you, they have to arrest you, basically. And because you didn't listen to the notice, they can treat you like criminals because you've committed crime by staying in the country.
So do you know what's funny? For that reason, so you guys like when you filed the stuff with the person didn't file it properly. So honestly, I think one part of like what goes on in my mind throughout the whole thing was like I was like kind of like why. So, and actually even the fact that that's the reason, I would definitely include it because it also just shows how fucking unfair it was, and how like it also, like when somebody comes to a new country, they're vulnerable, right? So maybe you guys didn't have money for a great lawyer, maybe your lawyer fucked you over, maybe, do you know what I mean? It's kind of like you guys were in a vulnerable spot. And so I mean, it even just nails home how like you guys really didn't like do something wrong, you know what I mean? And like nothing, like it wasn't like something was out of order, it was kind of like out of your hands and it happened. And just kind of like highlights how unfair it is. So yeah, those are the things that kind of stood out to me.
No,
I also like wanted to hear even more, like all your other chapters seem to have like a little bit of a more like
conclusion.
Yeah, like this one, it kind of like left me hanging a little bit.
Yeah, because honestly, it was rough to even get to this point. Like,
I can't.
It was a lot of like, it was like, I feel, because the thing is, I'm still trying to find a conclusion within myself. You know, the path I took in my life to go into political science, to do volunteer in Queen's Park, to try to see what was the government like, that all came from my pain. You know what I mean? Like, that was me trying to figure out, it was like, should I become a lawyer so that I can fucking do something about this?
Wow.
So it's like, so it's still something that's still so fresh in me. You know what I mean? Like, the reasons I've been the way I've been have been because of a lot of my fear around who I am as an immigrant, authorities, and never being able to ask the right questions, you know? Yeah. Something so simple as like having the audacity to ask questions is like foreign to me because you've been beaten down so much that you're like, no, you don't ask questions. You put your head down and you do what you're told.
It's also just really interesting too, because when I think of like an immigrant story, like because and that's also part of why it's like so eye-opening to hear this and why I want to hear more, is because when I think of an immigrant story, I think of it being harder on adults, right? And like, yes, you were, well, in a lot of ways, like you were an adult, but you were so young. So I guess like in my head, like when I knew like that you came from Colombia at a young age, but I didn't realize how conscious you were through it and how hard it was for you. And yeah, I mean, I guess when I think of it, I think like, because it's so funny, like when you say you're an immigrant, I don't think of you as an immigrant, right? Like I don't. I feel like you went to high school here, like you grew up here, you have your childhood in Colombia, but I don't think of you as an immigrant. So it's really interesting because you very clearly, that's a big part of your identity from your perspective. So it's just, I don't know, for me, very interesting. I mean, seriously, like, I mean, I think like, I don't think of you as an immigrant at all, right? So it's like very interesting to me.
No, I appreciate that. No, honestly, it's funny that you even mentioned that we never talked about this because I think it's really like don't like talking about, like it really still like boils my blood and it makes me feel a lot of anger because like it's like, can you wish death on a cop? Like You know what I mean? Like, can you hate the country that has fed you this many years? You know what I mean? Like it's like I feel like contradicting polarities between myself, where it's like I'm so grateful, but I also am not. Like I'm also still angry. You know?
Yeah, well, it's frustrating. Like as I'm listening to this story too, I'm thinking in some ways like you wished, you know, those things on the cop, and the cop to you was the symbol. But in my brain, I kind of thought the cop is a dummy who's doing his job, who doesn't know shit.
Exactly.
So it represents like a systematic problem we have. So it's interesting.
Just Stella, not to harp on this point again, but off of what Liz said, you know, a lot of what you're talking about is how like your blood still boils, and like it could be a good connecting point. Like if you wanted to flash back, like you could imagine like getting pulled over and you see those lights, and like it brings you back to that moment, and it could kind of, in terms of literary structure, could bring you literally back to the moment in the book. Or when your blood boils and you see, and you know, like you can think of like trauma happening in the current day and how you couldn't call the cops, or you know, and like just things that like your triggers. So like essentially a lot of what you express and, you know, in the behind the scenes of the book is like your triggers, and how like you're actually triggered now by doing this work, but I'm sure you're triggered all the time. And it always comes back to this kind of the inner child, or at least the child that actually experienced all the trauma. So like in terms of the way you write the book, that could be you know, your triggers are what bring you around the book, what bring you through the kind of story. So something to think about if you wanted to play on kind of the trigger point.
I like that. I'm definitely going to consider that too. No, that's a great, because you know what, that's the thing I'm trying to still figure out, is how to piece these pieces together and from what perspective to bring it into it. Right. And to keep it making sense, you know? So I really like that about, you know, maybe basing it around my current life and how those things actually still trigger me and still bring things. Like, for example, one thing could be like, you know, I was with an ex, I should have called the cops, but I decided not to, you know what I mean? Like literally in that moment, I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, and it makes your audience sympathetic to the woman now. And like, it makes everyone sympathetic to any woman who went through that, right? So you start to see your character in the eyes of other people. And I think that's a powerful tool, because it makes your character relatable all the time. And it makes it feel like, and that's what you kind of want in your book. So when women are talking to women, they're like, oh my God, you're making me think of this great book I just read, right? Because you're seeing that trauma in the woman across from you. And you're saying, oh my gosh, she went through all of this and she's now this. And like, I totally think that you would love that character. So you kind of want that kind of relatability, and it makes you sympathetic. So I mean, you're a very sympathetic character, but yeah, it really instills that regularly into your readers.
No, I appreciate that. That's great. That's really great feedback. Anybody else want to jump in, say anything that really stood out for them? Mark, Evelyn, Sufi, thanks for coming. I'm so happy.
I actually left you a message on your messenger because I couldn't talk.
Oh, girl, do you mind if I read it?
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead.
Okay. Evelyn says, girl, your piece had me in tears. I can't even put the audio on. I'm crying. This is very inspirational, and I wish I could hug you hard. Oh, thanks, love. I was born here and don't know how it is to be a deported, but my parents went through a lot to be here. And every person that has come here, I bow down to all of you guys. Yeah, like, you know, it's very hard, because when I think of myself as an immigrant, I have so much solidarity with my parents, which is, in any other moment, it was like me against my parents. But in that specific moment, it was my parents and I together, you know? It was a very solidifying moment, because regardless of the shit that was going on internally in our family, it was like, no, we're the illegals, we're the aliens, we're the criminals. So, you know, that like really like, and a lot of the stuff that I've built has been, well, my parents, I know what they went through. So it's like, I gotta pay it back. You know what I mean? Like emotionally, physically, like for whatever reason, even though, you know, we have a lot of differences, I have a very, like, in that area, I feel very connected in a different way with my parents, you know?
Sufi.
Hi, Sufi.
Hi. So I think this is exactly what I said last time, and maybe the first time as well, but I am just so sorry you went through that, and I just want to give you a big hug. Yeah.
Guys, I haven't been hugged in a while. Somebody said,
and then
I'm an inflatable doll.
You can cast it in probably in a few months for an actual one if you want. It's heartbreaking, and also as you go through this process, it's I don't know if this ever could be only a book, because to me, I think it's going to be a video book. Like I just can't see. I mean, I read a lot of books, but I don't know that just words will ever make it come to life the way your readings are. And I just think if these could be edited or not edited, however it is. And so that's one thing. The other thing is the suggestions that people were making. One of the suggestions that I thought of, it's not really super relevant to your story, but people like this kind of thing, is just if you could ever find that Anna so that she would know how much she meant to your life, because people do things in a moment. They have no idea that people remember them. They have no idea. I mean, who knows like what her life was like? Who knows what shit she was going through?
Yeah.
Who knows if she felt like she was a failure and she never did anything good? And hearing from you could be life-changing for her, and also life-changing for the audience to understand, because we're watching from the outside. So we're like either Anna or the cop or the system, or like we're not you, right? Unless we've been you and then we identify with you. But if we haven't, we identify with one of these, characters. And so like that cop, okay, like Daniela said, that cop didn't make the rule. Now, maybe he could have enforced it nicer and said, honey, I'm sorry, but we have to, he could have probably done it nicer. But otherwise, maybe he would have lost his job and his kids would have got hungry. Like, so I'm not telling you, not to waste your anger on him. Like it's your business. But the thing is, behind that cop is a whole system, right? So there's so many layers to this, like you said. The other thing is, I disagree with one comment that somebody made, because I think that what's important is that this is your story. Mm-hmm. So while context is important, and I think it would be relevant maybe later, I almost think that context could interfere. I think adding more facts to what you told us now, facts from the outside that put it into context of why you were kicked out or things like that, would almost distract from the fact that as a kid you didn't know why. Exactly. And understand why. And I think that would almost make it just like, okay, we're going to just feel injustice and whatever. This isn't a book about injustice, and it's not a book about a system. It's a book about, one little girl's experience, one woman's experience. And I think it's not an encyclopedia. It's not a textbook. And that's why I think it's so brilliant that you intersperse the narrative that's really just telling the story. And you've done it a few times now with the Mr. Officer, and I forget what the one was before, with the uncle or your dad's uncle. Like, I think that's what makes it so powerful. It's more like almost, more multimedia-ish, like, because we're coming at it from different angles at different times. So I think we have to, I think the way you've done it is exactly the way it should be done. Like, I guess what I'm saying is that you do have a good instinct about this. Yeah.
And that's the thing where I want to be careful with putting too much information, because then it doesn't sound like little Gisela. Like I knew a lot, but there were still things that I didn't know.
You could tell us later. You could tell us later. You could tell us in footnotes. You could tell us, in an afterword to the book. But I think it might interfere with the actual telling of the story, because you're telling it from the perspective. It's like a movie, and we're watching this little girl. The girl doesn't know or care about papers that weren't filed by a lawyer in Montreal. Like later. Yeah, of course, I was curious too, right? I'm thinking, is her dad a criminal? But the curiosity makes it more interesting, because I have to listen more closely to find out, did her dad rob a convenience store? Did her dad come illegally? Like I have to wonder, which makes me listen more intently.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. No, I really appreciate that, because, I'm just going by instinct in a lot of this, and I really appreciate that.
Not that there should never be context. Like, I think it would be good somewhere in the book if somehow we found out, like, at the end or something, but not necessarily in this chapter when you're telling your experience, is all I'm suggesting.
Because I don't want to make it so I have a very big passion for making it, like, I do feel very like the system, like, is fucked, and I feel a lot of passion towards it. but I also want to make it, like you said, from the perspective of that little girl that is going through that and what it was like for her to experience that without the context.
Gisela, there are a lot of the system is fucked books out there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but that doesn't appear to me to be your main point here.
It isn't.
Like, about the trauma of a little girl and how she's trying to get her life together, and she has another little girl who looks like her identical twin, and how she wants to make sure that this doesn't happen to her. Like, that's the sense that I'm getting about what your intention might be. I may be wrong, but
no, my intention is to make this book about coming home to myself.
Right.
I haven't really had a home.
So, I mean, there's like 1,000 other issues around this, issues of abusive men, issues of sexual, like they're all other, of system, how they treat immigrants. These are all other issues, but these are like 15 books, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Every book has to have a focus.
Exactly. So I'm really trying to keep it just with the parts that are going to talk about, why talk about Anna is because she felt like home in that moment. You know what I mean? She felt like my stability, it's funny. I always get a compliment. I give great massages, but she's the reason I give a lot of great massages. She taught me how to massage. And, and that's one way that I showed my father love, was because I started massaging his back, and he would say, "Oh, come baby, come massage my back." And I would do that for him all the time. And even now, like, my friends ask me, like, "Can you give me a massage?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll give you a massage," I give great, but she's the reason I do, so it's, I just want to keep the story going towards that, which is the people that felt like home in the moments where I was like most being traumatized in those moments, and being a little girl who was very much looking at the positive, even though the shit was just negative,
And I just want to end my comment kind of the way I started. I know that this is a book project, but to me, this is really secondary. I'm just so sorry you went through this.
Thank you. Thank you, Sophie. I appreciate you being here and all of your supports. It really means a lot. It really, really does.
Okay.
Where was Anna from?
Sorry?
Like, was she American? Was Anna American?
I think so. I don't remember where she was from. I'm pretty sure she worked there or she volunteered there, because they do take volunteers. So I'm not sure which one she was, but she was just always around and like super. Yeah, she was like a yogi, like she's just so like peace and love. So yeah, it's like how I remember her. But no, I appreciate that. Anybody want to add anything that stood out for them, anything that maybe wasn't mentioned?
Giselle?
Yes, baby.
When you say about you want to make sense of these things,
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of want to say to you with love, the story is that this shit doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? It's like, as an adult, it still doesn't make sense. As a kid, it doesn't make sense. I told you this before, but I had this poetry professor, and he asked the question, what does poetry do? What does literature do? What problem does it solve? He said, it doesn't solve any problem. All it does is it tries to articulate the problem as truthfully as possible. And that it doesn't solve things. It just articulates what is in the most truthful way possible. And so the reason all of this is interesting is not because it's a linear A to B to C. It's like, I loved my father and I hated my father. I loved Canada and I hated Canada. I loved this man and I hated this man. Like, all of these contradictions and juxtapositions are not problems that you have to solve. You just have to speak your truth. And the truth of human existence is complexity and us trying to figure out, how do we make sense of all of these opposites? So just put the confusion and the simultaneous opposites, the contradictions. That is the truth. So you don't have to smooth that out for the reader. You don't have to treat your reader as though they're the smartest person in the world. They get it. You don't have to dumb it down or dilute it for the reader, because the reader is living a complex existence too, right? And so you just telling even the pieces and the fragments. There's a lot of poetry that use the format of fragmentation as its form, because the content was about feeling a lack of sense of certainty, right? And so there were a lot of the postmodern poets, the reason that they wrote in such a fragmented way is because reality was so chaotic. And so they say form needs to meet content. And what you went through was chaotic. So you don't have to smooth out the edges, because that your desire is to tell the most truthful story. And the truth of the matter of most of our experiences are that they're extremely complex. They have a bunch of contradictions. So I just want to say that shouldn't be the thing that you tell yourself. I need to make sense of it. Anyways, yeah.
No, I appreciate you saying that, because that's exactly what I was telling myself. I'm like, how do you make sense of this? Because I'm still like, and I think that's why I came on very like, I felt very guilty actually bringing you this piece to you today, because I felt like most things kind of had like a more conclusive kind of bow at the top, and that's why I literally mentioned that in one of the readings. I can't leave this with a bow at the top. Yeah, just like I'm still trying to, like, there is no order. It just really happened to me, and that's how it happened to me, and it's still very real.
We don't want a fake bow on it. There's enough fake bow bullshit in life, you know that, right? Yeah. We are dying for the truth. We're dying for the raw version. Just trust us that we can handle the truth, and then speak your truth, and then you did your job.
No, I appreciate that. I really do, because that was, I think that was the hardest part, and that's why I was so nervous. I literally wanted to like over-explain myself at the beginning when I was talking, because I'm like, I hope this makes sense. You know, like that's how I kind of felt like, because there's no one I can talk to about my immigrant experience. Not like I go to an immigrant friend and I'm like, hey, you know when you got deported? Me too. Okay, cool. Like, how was that for you? You know what I mean? Like, I've never had a chance to explore that with anybody at all. So it's like, this is the first time I'm putting it out there, even processing it myself. So I appreciate you saying that, Paloma, because it does give me permission to just be okay with it being messy and being more raw and not having a bow at the top.
Yeah, everything you've produced has come out of instinct.
Yeah.
Everything. It hasn't been a formula. It's been instinct, and the rawer and the realer, the more we respond to it. And anyways, I love you and I'm proud of you as per usual.
Can I just say one more thing on just based on what you guys just said? It's not just an immigrant story. Like, the thing is, we all have our shit. And I think the reason that this is so compelling, and I think it's compelling to everybody here, and I think I can't imagine it not being compelling to anyone who hears it, because anyone who hears this is going to hear your story and your pain, but also reflect on their own pain and their own shit. And it may not be an immigrant story, and it may not be, you know, with the father or with an uncle or whatever. It may be something else, but the feeling of helplessness is universal. You know, the feeling, like, we can all see that little girl, and we can all know what that feels like in various degrees. We've all felt it, you know. I imagine that everybody's felt some version of that at some time, whether it's in a relationship with a parent, with the law, with just something that's not fair, with racism, with, you know, slavery. Like, it just, you know, I'm sure there are people who think back, you know, that you know, when I was in Spain, I went on a tour, and I don't know where the anger came from that Jews were expelled 500 years ago. Like, I'm thinking, okay, the Holocaust is more recent. That makes more sense, right? We have relatives that were lost there. I don't know that we didn't have relatives that were expelled from Spain. And yet they erased all the Jewish marks from the country. And so this is relevant to what you're doing here, because what I'm trying to say is, this isn't, it's kind of piggybacks on what Paloma said. This isn't just a literal story. This is just, you're drawing a painting. You're doing what was Pollock who threw the paint on the ground? Like, you're making a mess because that's how you feel. Like, you're just getting it out, right? And we don't have to understand exactly what you went through. We don't have to know what the immigrant experience is like to know that we've been through a mess too. You know, that we felt anger too, that we've had to suppress our anger too. You know, that we felt helpless, and that we had to shut up because of a greater good. Like, you had to take care of the family by shutting up, or you had to take care of the family by not telling on that uncle, or like, everybody makes compromises. Everybody gets angry about those compromises. Everybody burns inside. Like, they all, so I think what it is here, it's kind of like Paloma said, it's like poetry or art. I mean, my understanding of what we're hearing here, and I think the reason it's so compelling is that it is universal.
Last thing I'll add on that, It's an artifact. You're digging up an artifact, and when do you ever find an artifact that comes out perfect? Every real artifact is broken and cracked and dirty, and that's how you know it's real, right?
That's true. That's very, very true. That's very, no, honestly, like, I so appreciate everything you guys are saying, because part of this process, like, I'm not a professional writer. I don't even know what that looks like. So for me, it's just put it out there, put it raw, my instinct. And it's been so great. So fucking great. I love you guys so much. Unless anybody else has anything they want to share or talk about, then we can just go for the night. But let me know. Anybody want to say anything else? Let me see. I think there's a couple messages. Okay. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Felicia. I'll read your guys after. I really appreciate you guys being here. And honestly, like, yeah, I just want to make this book a reality, because I just know it could change a lot of people's lives and really help them, just the way it's helped me right now, just by doing this kind of work. But also just because, like, it's very healing. Honestly, like, I'm kind of doing it for a very selfish reason, which is like, it's super healing to put all my cards on the table and be like, this is it. This is all there is. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here. I love you all. Let me just take a, if you're on camera, can you just smile for me? Love you guys so much. Thank you. Love you. And I will see you guys next reading, June 4th, okay? And come in, get ready to have another party. I'll see what other layers of onion I had to peel off me. Bye. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye, Priscilla. Thank you.
Thank you.